Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, let's see if the screen thing works.
All right, cool.
Yeah, cool. So how long have you been on Minds? And
Since 2015.
wow, okay, cool. You must have seen so much development.
Yeah, it's been really cool. And you know what's kind of funny is, especially every now and then I think about like the early minds and with our group. I'm one of the last ones. Oh, Nikki's still too. She's from the original group. And I just like I don't know wherever they are. Hope they find their way back, because a lot of the stuff that we were talking about in early minds is stuff now that it seems like okay, it's ready. You know, a lot of times in our shows, it would be like complaining, like, we should have crypto integration. We should, fucking this. And why don't we have that? And I'm just like, dude, let's do it. Like, that was my main thing, is like, okay, it's fine to like criticize, but let's actually do it. And I remember we had a show.
A lot of these projects, and a lot of them are also moving pretty quickly. But generally, I haven't seen something in the social networking space that I think maybe there's a lot of work that's been going on in the back end for a bunch of the projects that contributed to the Decentralized Web Summit. But what I'm hoping is that all the work we've done on the front end of Minds is really going to be a huge contribution to that community, because we sort of are starting to gain a lot of momentum with how fast the front end is moving, and it's only going to keep going much faster. So I think that we're on a framework that is going to be pretty well absorbed by a lot of the community.
We had two shows, especially in the Minds Panel show. One was the crypto show, where we're talking just about the token, and we were actually talking about writing the white paper for a bill, because it was like taking long, and we're like, let's just do it. And then we had the decentralized network, and we had Bill, and that was pretty interesting. And everything that he was talking about then, and that's why I kind of stick with it, because I've had conversations with Bill, and I really do, it takes time, but he really kind of seems to me, for the most part of what I've noticed, as much as he can, like walk the walk, as he'll say something, and then later, of course everything takes time, and then okay, he's moving towards that goal.
Yeah. And it must have been so surreal for you to see him on Joe Rogan the other day.
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah. Oh, that was pretty cool. I was actually talking to an old to a class of 15 member. She's still on Minds, but she doesn't really use it that much, but we like email each other. And she was like, I called that 3 years ago. I said Bill should be on Joe Rogan. And she kept on like, I'm psychic. I'm like, I don't think you're psychic, but but yes, you did call it.
Wow. So what did you think of the conversation and the effects of it?
It was cool. Like, I mean, it was a lot of stuff that Mac was talking about it. And yeah, I noticed that. It's not what I was focused on. Mac said he seemed a little nervous. I was just thinking, of course, yeah. And then, but Joe Rogan's been doing podcasts forever, and he does these, like, I'm always amazed. And I mean, I don't like follow his show all that time, but the past couple of years I've been doing a little bit of podcasting, and like my friend, he does this other show that I helped him start. And just thinking about it in a more like creative producing way, I'm just amazed how he's able to like have all these different conversations for like 3 hours and it not seem like, oh, him just hanging out shooting the shit. Like that's like impressive. Like, I don't know, it's a really, well, he does it a lot, but for like, I would think for someone like Bill or anybody who's not doing it like that all the time, it could be a little bit overwhelming in that sense.
Definitely, yeah. What struck me at one point is that having done jujitsu for a long time, there's this like playfulness to it where it felt like Joe is like actually in full agreement of what Bill's saying, but he's choosing in many of the moments to like toy with him the way you would a combative opponent.
You have yours, which like you look like a hacker on like House of Cards. You look like a guy you call in to break into the mainframe server.
I'm not that, honestly.
I believe you're not.
I hang out on GitLab and check out code, but I cannot code. I cannot code.
Listen, man,
I'm not claiming to be a developer. No,
I know you're not.
These people are another level. Yeah, it is incredible.
I understand. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Like when you kind of like reach in to like get a feel for them, and you kind of like.
Yeah, and you're just kind of like poking them a little bit.
Yeah.
And then there were some moments that I just thought were so beautiful and honest.
Yeah.
At some point, Bill was like, "I'm not attached to my thinking" or something like that. And it was just like paused the whole conversation. It's like, wow, great.
Right. You could say, hey, anyone can take this and cut it up and.
Okay.
So you have the ability to license it however you want.
Right.
You could say, hey, anyone can take this and cut it up and.
Right.
You could say, hey, anyone can take this and cut it up and remix it, or you could say, no, it's locked down. But the free will stuff is connected to how we're dealing with information. And like, if you think, realistically, we don't own what we're saying. We're a part of it.
Right.
We're a conduit. We're a unique.
If you'd ask people, say in 1900, what are the odds of, man landing on the moon, they would have said that's ridiculous. And if you try to talk to them about the internet, they would not even know what the heck what are you even talking about? Like, this sounds so crazy.
So, I don't think it aligns with how the universe works to really be locking down information. I think that it makes sense probably in certain short-term business, but, I think we have to open it up to what's really going on.
Yeah, and that's like a skill too, to kind of like be able to get to that point.
Sure, 100%. And then there's the moment at the end where like, I don't know, I felt the way it ended was just like, it was almost like a recognition that Bill's message is sort of like so obvious that that's the direction that we as a society must go.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and I kind of like that, and I think part of it too is because some people were talking about that part. I was reading the comments in the YouTube, which I never really do, but I was just doing it just to see what other people's feedback was about it, and they were talking about how, Joe finally, asking tough questions. And I think it was in direct response to his Jack Dorsey interview, where he got a lot of flack for being too easy.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is like what I liked what you were saying about Bill. It was like, I'm not like trying to convince you, like, but this is how I see it, and I think this is just how it's going to go. And it's like, come join us and have fun or whatever. Like, I'm not trying to sell you anything. Yeah, that's like a whole new. I think that's just how things are, really. And the problem I think is that pushing of narrative, that kind of weaponizing ads that is really destroying stuff. Like it has this destructive thing to, like, this whole illusion of, Twitter is going to be the conversation for the world, and we're going to have the ecology of ideas, and things are going to be battled out in the marketplace. But no, it's not like that. It's like few people with money and access are pushing certain things. And it's not like an ecology. It's not, organic. And things go awry when it's not this kind of organic way of doing things, you know?
Yeah. It seems so interesting to me that like maybe 10 years ago, the idea of printing our own money as any form of community seemed like a fiction.
Oh yeah.
Seemed like a Huxley dream, and now it's like an inevitable possibility. It's already here. Yeah. Everybody from like hackers to banks are creating their own economies.
Yeah, and I think soon in the next 10 years, it's just going to be like a given. It goes without saying. Oh, what? You guys remember when you couldn't, like when that wasn't a concept? Of course I could mint my own coin, and why wouldn't you do it?
Right.
Which would be interesting.
Yeah, Joe Rogan was saying he used the term social currency at the end, which is interesting. The term I was hoping would come up was online direct democracy, because I think that's a powerful phrase that kind of gets to the heart of maybe where some of this is going. But then also the phrase social currency is interesting. What do you think about that?
Yeah. A lot of this stuff that we're doing, in my point of view, is already stuff that we already do. Like it's already a natural state, and we're just kind of expressing it in a different way. Like before the internet, there was a social currency within your community. Right. By you being an upstanding person or you being an asshole, people were like, oh, don't do business with this guy because he lies and he cheats, or this guy is reliable because of this, and you know, sometimes you have external symbols of whether you're part of the church or you're part of the police department or whatever, and so there's always been a social currency. And we had a show one time and we were talking about social contracts, and we weren't talking about like legal social contracts. We're just talking about the general thing that we already have social contracts with people that are not, you know, set in stone, but just an agreement that we have. Hey, tonight we're gonna have Imaginarium show at 4 p.m. Whoever wants to come by. People like it, and we're like, oh, we should do this. And then the social currency and the social contract happens by people gravitating towards that idea. And you know, all my best fun stuff that I've done with Imaginarium has kind of always just fallen into place. Someone mentions something, and then someone has some type of song. I think this may or may not be a true story, but it's true enough for me. I think I had one of the first viral videos on mine way back in the day. And that video happened because our friend, Wasted Talent, was tagging, just a tag on a wall somewhere. He was tagging the just mines, and he recorded it. And so it was, you know, time lapse. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. I was like, I'm gonna put it in Satorid D's mixer. And then at the same time he did that, someone tagged me on a song by Pretty Lights, and I was the only one that got tagged in it. And it was just kind of, you know, serendipitously. And I looked, the timestamp for his video and the timestamp for the song were within seconds of each other. I'm like, oh, this is just too perfect. And I just overlapped it to there. And then I mixed in visuals. I'd like to take this chance to thank all the Minds community for inspiring me, pushing me, and making me keep on grinding away at reality. Because grinding away at reality is the only way we're going to manifest our dreams. And we all have digital dreams. And I see it as my job, as a shaman, to manifest digital dreams into reality. And I see all the pretty lights, all the little minds shining bright out there in the vastness, the infinite Imaginarium. This is your boy Satorid D, and I see all you guys expressing yourselves, putting in work, having fun, being trolls, adding to the community. Whatever it is, just keep on doing it. But in order for this thing to succeed, going to take each and every one of us to flip the script. It's programmed to be programmed, and we are the programmers of the next operating system for humanity. Make no mistake, people, there's a lot of work to be done. But that doesn't mean we can't have a little fun. Sit back and enjoy the show. And I just started like just saying whatever, and then I just threw that up, and it was like within minutes, an hour or so after he posted that, after I got tagged, that I just threw it up there, and then that was one of the, I believe one of the first viral Minds videos. But it was like that magic that I was like, how do I foster that more? And I just started thinking about it more and more, about how we could use this. The whole idea was that this was a blank canvas, and how can we use it in fun and interesting ways? And anything was possible in that. And in my thinking, I wasn't thinking anything but just having fun, you know?
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. And do you think it kind of like equates to that the more collaborative you are, or perhaps the more like open you are to, or how receptive you are to other people's inspiration, the more valuable you are in the system?
Yeah, I think
in
so.
life, I suppose.
Yeah, in life too. But yeah. I do notice I oscillate between kind of being like free and hippie-ish, and then also to kind of like my more analytical mind and like viewing things as systems and like, okay, design and stuff. So I do like analyze the difference between Satorid D's channel and the Infinite Imaginarium channel. And for some reason, the Infinite Imaginarium, I guess because Bill like blessed us, the Infinite Imaginarium channel, when we first started it, kind of got like blew up, and we have all these subscriptions. It's like 5 times what Satorid D's subscriptions are. And you know, a lot of them are bots. I know that a lot of them are bots. But the only thing that's different about Satorid D, and I do sometimes message or talk to people on Infinite Imaginarium, but I don't like to have conversations with people as Infinite Imaginarium. I usually be like, oh, even if I'm like writing a comment, I'll say something and then I'll be like, this is Satorid D. And right. Just to say, you know, because the whole idea of Imaginarium is supposed to be a collaborative effort. I don't want everybody to just assume it's me. Then like people think, oh, I remember like, especially early on with people, I've been trying to get people to use it, and they'll be like, oh, is it all right if I post this? If it's all right if I do this? I'm like, no, just do it. That's why I gave you the password. And it's really hard to get people to get free with that. Even me, if I'm like, oh, I want to use this, but I'm kind of like nervous. And you gotta watch out for like how everybody comfort zone is. But transformed to me as Satorid D, I noticed I could post something similar and I get more interaction with Satorid D because I'm like interacting with people and collaborating with people and like messaging them directly and be like, hey, I really like your stuff, or like, hey, like that's just cool, like, oh, this song, like you read something and it reminded me of this. I mean, that's how first Imaginarium started. Like I would do a video and then someone will be like, oh, this inspired me to write this. I'm like, oh, then like record it and then I'll put music to it and then I'll figure out like the visuals for it later. And then we just started doing that, and I was like, okay, maybe this needs an umbrella for it. And
yeah. What's your name in the world of non-computers?
Oh, Daniel.
Daniel, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Curtis.
Curtis, okay.
And some people call me Curry. Cool. And yeah, that's interesting. I've been kind of using multiple channels too, and it's interesting that they're called channels.
Yeah.
Like we could have called it profiles or user or whatever, but
yeah,
the language that gets chosen, it feels is so essential to how the whole thing forms.
And that's actually what possessed me to not use my real name when I signed up. When I first came on to Minds, it was via Facebook, and I remember reading an article, and I didn't really use Facebook that much. I used Facebook kind of like a messenger for my friends. like, hey, you want to go out today? And I'm like, oh, let's go do this. I never really posted much on Facebook. Just like I would just talk to my friends, like, hey, you want to get high today, or whatever, you know. That's how I used it, because I did post some stuff that I wrote, and I don't know, people just didn't know how to respond to what I was doing, and I just kind of like gave up on that. Like, yeah, whatever. But when I read that article, I was like, oh, okay, this seems interesting. And I was always, you know, Friendster happened, and then I moved to MySpace before all my friends did, and then I moved to Facebook before everybody else did. And so I was like, oh, this is like just like a new version of whatever. So I go there, and when I was signing up, it said channels, right? Start your channel. It wasn't a profile. And then I was looking at other people's stuff, and a lot of people were doing anonymous kind of stuff. So I'm like, okay, I got a chance to like reinvent myself. I always liked Satori, as far as I was really big into Jack Kerouac, and he had this one book one time called Satori in Paris, and that was the first time I ever heard that word. I didn't even know what it really meant. I just liked how it looked. I liked how it sounded in my head. And then later, you know, I kind of like went into like Eastern philosophy, and then I was like, okay, I like this. So I would use Satori D as just my own personal, or something that meant something only to me, that no one else really knew. So when I got here, I was like, okay, I'm going to use Satori D. Okay, I'm going to use this. And then I was like, I used my face at first, and then I noticed everybody else had masks and had symbols and this and that. Okay, I like Terrence McKenna. I'm going to use this ancient shamanic symbol of the bee shaman. And then that was like the birth of Satori D. And then from there, you know, you're talking about like channels, and then so I started to think differently. Okay, if I had an actual TV channel or a media channel, what's the kind of stuff that I would want? I was like, well, I like consciousness, I like psychedelics, I like poetry, I like music. And just kept on more focusing on that, and then just turned into like, I remember the early on conversations I would have. There's this guy that did animations, and I was like, oh, like we should do a comic book, and if you could do this edit and this and that. And I kept on, I felt like I was bugging him. I know I wasn't, but he was just busy doing other stuff. And then later I was like, let me just try it myself. At that early time too, everybody was sharing a lot of information about open source projects. He like that one guy, So Fuego, Corey, he did this great list of open source projects for like media, whether it was like GIMP, Lightworks, all sorts of different projects to do whatever, any kind of media, you know, video editing, photo editing, you know, whatever it was, he was compiling this list. And then I was like, okay, let me try this one, and like let me play with that. And then I just got like obsessed with it, and so I was like, fine, I don't need you anymore, I'm gonna do my own editing. And then just started going crazy with it.
Yeah, people don't realize how much work and time and organization goes into creating content until they do it.
And that's what I was telling. It's always a weird thing how other people perceive you, especially when you do stuff and you're putting stuff out there. So I'm always aware when like someone tags me on something. And so this guy was doing this video, and he tagged me in it. And he was like, oh, what do you guys think? I'm trying to do this. He was trying to do some weird, and he was asking for advice. And the style and the content wasn't my cup of tea. But he tagged me in it, and it was a video that was like 10 minutes long or 12 minutes long. There was editing, and I know he was trying to do the audio editing. I'm like, dude, you did do a 10-minute video. I know that took a couple of days. And I'm like, you put in this work. Even though I don't care for this style, I don't care for this point of view, but just on the technical aspect, like, dude, this is interesting. And I told him, you know, I just gave him a little bit of like my own weird little tips about like, the only thing I would say is like during this time spot, the audio is like really bad where it's like hard to like focus. So you should, I don't know if that's the effect that you wanted or you should clean that up. And then he started talking to me. He's like, oh yeah, audio editing is the bane of my existence. And I'm like, dude, I know what you're talking about. Like, you could go insane with trying to clean up audio. And then we just started like talking like that, and just to give him encouragement. Like, even though I don't care for this, but you're trying, and I respect that. Just keep on doing it.
So where do you think it's gonna be in like a year or two? Like, where do you imagine the mine's ecosystem?
I'm hoping, and I kind of casually mention this every now and then, but I think so. Me and Frosted Rose, who we write a lot of poetry together, and Nikki actually had a dream about this, and I actually had a dream about this this morning. But what I want to do is hopefully get back the Imaginarium. And the Imaginarium always was supposed to be kind of like this creative workspace. One of my friends wanted to interview me on a podcast, and I thought it was weird. But then, so, he said, "Oh, give me a little bio." I'm like, "Oh my God, what the fuck am I going to say in my bio?" And I was like, okay, if I was writing a business card for Satorid D, what would it be? It's like, Satorid D is a digital shaman, and his business is manifesting dreams. And so I'm like, okay, that sounds good. And so I gave that to him. And then I just started thinking about that. I was like, okay, we're in the business of manifesting dreams. So let's dream up a dream and make it happen. And then how do we go about doing that? The thing is, what I think we should move towards, and which I'm glad Bill said this in his Joe Rogan thing, is to bring this energy out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the Gatherings is actually the perfect little step towards this, as we interact directly with each other, and we keep on doing this, in which the early version of the Gatherings, which I was doing with duct tape and gum, was the Imaginarium.
Yeah.
And we always had this idea of taking the show like on the road, and this summer, just like taking a dry run. I have a sister that lives in Boston area. She always would say, "Oh, I want to travel the country," but she's always a principal, and then like work always came first. So now she's like, "Oh, okay, now that I have time, I'm gonna have actual summer off. Like, I want to do something." And she's like, "You want to join me?" I'm like, "Hey, yeah." You're gonna share the cost, right? I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll travel the country and we'll go visit family." But I want to use that as like a prototype to map out, okay, start thinking about like, what is the bare minimum of what it's going to cost to do this?
Mm-hmm.
In more practical terms. Okay, what is the time frame that I have to like map out? Is a week too fast? Is 3 weeks too long? You know what I mean? And think about it in those practical ways, because I've always wanted, I've been pushing for all sorts of stuff. Like, there's this group called Open Collective.
So Open Collective started about a year and a couple of months ago, and the goal was to enable what we call the intergeneration organizations. So organizations that are groups of people that have a shared purpose or a shared mission, but they're not either territorially based, so open source projects, for example, or large social and political movements that are global, or they can't really fit into the assumptions that governments have for organizations. So they can't really form a 501c3, or they can't have an LLC because it's not in their nature. They don't want to have a conversation about equity. They don't care who the president is, or they have their side projects, right? So there's a lot of organizations that we realized, and that we had ourselves, that we couldn't fund, because if we didn't have a legal entity, we couldn't have a bank account. So we couldn't have collective funding. Yes, someone could give me money as an individual, but it didn't belong to me. It belonged to the community. How we fund, structure, and power these kinds of organizations is like what we set out to do.
And basically, it's an open ledger for people to use to, like, if you're donating to this organization, they're mostly nonprofits, and it shows like like, so you're part of this group, and say you buy something for the organization, food for the meeting, and you get reimbursed. All you do is like you take a picture of your receipt. There's like, depending on your structure, a board that says approves that you get reimbursed for it. It's there for everybody to see. You get the funds to you, and it's like this transparent way for groups to be like, this is where the money's going, but you have to write up, your budget, your proposal. And I did a mock proposal for our podcast, and it never worked, but it was just that exercise of being like, okay, how much do you think this thing's gonna cost? Price things out, think things like in this way, and show it to people. And so you're not just saying, oh, I want money to do this road trip. No, this is what I want to do. This is how much I think it's gonna cost. Here's my loose plan for it, but I want to make it transparent. So if you're giving money, and you don't even like, I don't even want to think about like money. Like, if you have a couch for me to sleep on, like, that's going to the cause of this project. If you have a camera, gas money, like, it doesn't have, it could, I'm thinking about like resources and how much that could be cut down as like we crowdsource this venture and even crowdsource talent. And
this thing's called Open Collective?
Yeah, Open Collective.
Is it .com? Can I reach it? Well, how do I get to it?
I think it's .com. It might. Cool. Let me look it up.
So the way Open Collective works, it's a platform where we can create collectives, or collectives create themselves actually. And then underneath that platform is a network of host organizations that act as their fiscal sponsors.
From different countries.
From different countries, in different verticals. And we're actually now playing with the idea of having wallets, like a Bitcoin wallet or an Ether wallet being a host as well. The concept is that underneath there's this network of host organizations. So now you can, boom, create your collective, start receiving funding. All the transactions are transparent, so you share your ledger. What we also strive to do is to sort of remove the complexities of dealing with money and talking about money by making all the transactions transparent by design. Like, the only way of removing money from your collective is submitting an expense for being reimbursed or an invoice that the core team has to approve, and then the host pays. All of that is transparent, so you can see who make the donation, what are you using that money for. Many collectives are also starting to show their expenses. They don't even have money, they don't have donations, but they're like, we just want to show what it takes to do what we do. And we shouldn't run with the cost without at least other people being aware that what we do implies all of this effort.
Now you start to document.
Exactly.
We do have expenses. We're not just pocketing this.
Exactly.
Right.
Those, and in some way, what we think is going to happen is like what happened with like sharing code at the beginning. At the beginning was just putting your code out there, right? But that enabled a new kind of collaboration that didn't exist until you could actually show your code. So by showing your ledger, by making your costs transparent, what we hope to see and what we think we'll see is new types of collaboration between collectives that didn't exist before because no one knew.
Because it's almost like a financial GitHub.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good, yeah.
Where do you live in California?
I live in Los Angeles.
Wow, right in the heart of the beast.
Yeah, I'm in the belly of the beast.
How long have you lived in LA?
All my life. Born and raised in LA.
Wow, crazy. What area of LA?
It's the city I live in is called Monterey Park, but do you know that area?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like 10 minutes away from downtown.
Yeah, cool. And what do you do for like your paychecks and whatnot? I'm
a cook.
Nice.
So like I've been
You can stay on my couch anytime if you cook for me.
Yeah, and see, I've done a lot of different types of cooking. My go-to stuff is some kind of Asian or Mexican. I'm Hispanic, so it's either my grandma's cooking or the cooking I grew up with, because Monterey Park's a big Asian community. And like one of the first things I ever learned was to do like fried rice. I've just been enamored with their flavor profiles and stuff like that. So, I mean, I have like go-to dishes that I do that are pretty good.
Nice. That open collective, I had a similar idea that I was applying to the Minds infrastructure, where if you could create something similar to a group, but it's set up so you can record hours and record expenses, and you record the initial financial agreement, and you can choose to make it open to crowdfunding or it's a closed financial exchange. And it's just open source. Anybody can see it. Anybody can follow it as it progresses. Like right now, Bill's paying me to formulate some sort of visual, illustrated, perhaps animated explanation of what the token system looks like. And what's interesting is at the same time, we're thinking about how these sort of exchanges could work on the ecosystem and could function. Because right now I'm just like, hey, pay me whatever you pay me based on the work, and I'm just like happy to do it because it's exciting to do it. But in the future, it'd be great to have a bit of an infrastructure around these sort of financial exchanges.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's coming. I just don't know what it'll look like. Maybe that's a conversation I can have with Bill.
Yeah. I think that's something early on. I mean, I've wanted Imaginarium to be more than just the podcast or more than just whatever the show that we do. The podcast and the show are, in my mind, kind of secondary to what I'm really thinking. And what I'm really thinking is how to practically, okay, we all talk about this near future where it's collaborative, decentralized thing, right? How would that actually work and then like actually live in that future? And what you're saying about people's time, people's efforts, skills, and stuff like that. But for me, the things that I've seen and that I go to, Open Collective has a really good thing that they're doing about is basically a transparent, open budget / ledger. And they too, because I talked to the person that created it. I have my thing on there, but I've been trying to get our group to do it. And it's just like herding cats. But I know that, and this is what I did when I first did the Minds panel show, was instead of telling everybody we should do the show, I just made a show. Like I edited a show and like put that out there, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is cool! Like, can I join the show?" And I'm like, "Yeah, come on!" But I want, like, if I could show them what I see, and they have the experience of, okay, so this is how we do it. I donate this money, and I know that is going to your camera, or you do this work for me. We actually Kevin did it. Contracted this one guy that did music for this soundtrack, and we had this idea of doing a documentary that never came to fruition. But that was the thing. It was like I had to play mediator between them two. Like Steven would contact me and be like, "Oh, I did the song." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Did you talk to Kevin?" Because Kevin said that he's the one that like commissioned it. And he's like, "Oh, I can't get in contact with him." And then so I'm like, "Okay, let me see what he's doing." I'm like, "Hey, Kevin, Steven finished the song. He wants to know, like, you know, if you like it or not. If you don't like it, he could improve on it. But I think we should pay him." but it wasn't my money, so I was like, why can't we just have something that helps facilitate that? Yeah. Like, I don't want to be like being the mediator between everybody's interactions. And I'm like, I do it because I kind of need to, but I was like, why can't he just be there? Like, "Oh, Steven finished his work. Do you like it? Oh, yes." Then give him like the money's like in like escrow. Like when I was talking to her, like you put the money into this collective fund and they hold it, and you could host it yourself, but if it's underneath a certain amount, then the organization Open Collective doesn't charge you to do it. Later, if you get big enough, yeah, they do. But she comes back from her activist days where they have like groups, like just a collective wanting to do one project, whether it's like, you know, like we're gonna have this conference to talk about, you know, Occupy Wall Street, and you guys are joining up for a couple months to do this project, and then you have to worry about like who's paying this and who's doing that. Like, just donate it to this, and then you, like, she just wanted to automate that. Like, she wanted to think about, you know, her part in, you know, what she was going to say, but she didn't, like, there has to be an easier way to do this. But, you know, when you're that small of a group and you're just like a one-time thing, do you really need to build like this whole organization and then have a shared bank account and get lawyers and do all this kind of stuff? Like, why isn't there like somewhere in between for just And
Patreon was an attempt at that, unsuccessful, I would say, but a good stepping stone to. Yeah. There's a quote I like, which is that the best option is the option which creates the most new options.
Yeah.
And that's like almost the definition of scalable, which is like, if we don't commit to like forcing it to be a certain way, then it has room to grow. Because I don't think buying an object, or like if I buy something physical off you that you have to ship to me, it's not that different than buying a digital commodity off you. And that's not that different than commissioning you or collaborating with you for you to put in creative hours into some sort of project, right?
Yeah.
So like, I think it's possible, and maybe Open Collective is a good example of this, of like to build an infrastructure that can facilitate all of those interactions.
And I think that's the thing. So then there's another tool, and all this kind of stuff, like Open Collective is open source. This other group, Lumio, who has this great, they call it a collaborative decision-making app. And it's basically like a group, but it has all this functionality to like vote on stuff and to put proposals. And so like when you're like in a group chat and someone has an idea that we should do this, and then it opens it up for like, you set the time, like 24 hours or 48 hours to vote yes or no if we should do this. And then it sends the message out to everybody like, oh, pending vote for everybody, make sure you look at it, and then only 2 more hours before this is that. And we used that for a while, and it was working. But once again, long term, if you don't have, I do not want to be taskmaster to anybody. It's like, if you want to do it, let's do it. And I'm just thinking on my own way, like, how can we do this better? What are the different things that we could do? Like, what do we have right now that we could use to do this? Like, I'm tired of people saying, oh, I wish this was it, or I wish that. Like, no, there has to be something. Like, someone's doing something somewhere, and I want to find them and see if I can use it. And so it was just trying it out and seeing what works and what doesn't work. We used this other one that Missy Nomer was using, and it was pretty good, but it was more like, I don't know, it was a collective organization app. And we did it, and you had to pay for it, and we didn't have
open source.
Yeah, it wasn't open source, and I don't mind paying for it, but if we don't have the actual group that's gonna actually use it, I told her, as a Missy, I am not against this idea, but if it's just us three and we do all our talking in Google Chat or Slack, then do we really need to pay $20 a month to do it? I'm like, if we had like 20 different projects and 30 different people, then it makes sense. Like, I kind of like it. You said you like it, but is it practical? And I was like, I honestly prefer to, if we can, use open source projects. And even if they're not ideal, and I was saying Lumio, we already have Lumio. the one that you want to get is not much different from Lumio, and it's open source. And I have an evil master plan that if this works out, we send an email to the people at Lumio and say, hey, mine's is an open source project. Can we blend in your functionality to our groups? Like that's what I was envisioning. Like let's put them together. The groups will work a lot better, like how Lumio works. But I also think too, it's for each group. A lot of times, what I would say, I want Imaginarium to be a creative virtual workspace. And what would you need for that? And we have like this list, and we haven't used it in a while. And everything happens in ebbs and flows. But I'm really getting excited with other people. Mac has been like really excited about his poetry group, this thing, and I think we could keep on pushing groups to the limit of how we could collaborate with it. And if we need more functionality, we pitch it to Bill or to Jack or somebody and be like, what would be nice if we had this option on this? I mean, they need to overhaul Messenger, that's for sure too.
Did you ever go on GitLab and look at the workflow there?
I haven't been there in a while, but yeah, I used to go.
Looking at that, I just became like instantly more patient for all of these projects because the amount of organization.
I get because I've signed into their Git, so I get all these notifications on my Patreon mail. It's like at least like 30 of them a day.
Yeah.
Okay, they're working, and that's one thing is like I've been so patient with things, and you see the steady progress. But there's things for people to try out, for people to use. One thing that we still have and we still use from our testing out days is, for whatever reason, Slack seemed to be the best. It's just a group messenger, but it has like some functionality to tie in your, for as much as I don't want to use it, but Google and Google Docs and Google Drive, how easy it is to like share and all that kind of integration. It's just easy. It works. And I mean, eventually I would want to move away, but for now. So we share documents on there. And it's been kind of a lull recently. People do other things, and I never want, like I said, I'm not no taskmaster. And I usually don't say anything to anybody unless I have an idea. I'm like, let's do this. Like if I would not pitch a project if I can't do it all myself, and it'd just be like, oh, it'd be nice if you guys join. But that's just me. I just don't want to like bug people.
Do you have any skills as a developer or coder?
Very minimal. I know HTML, a little bit of Java. When in high school, I went to a technical high school, and I did C++. I majored in computer science, all that kind of stuff. And I had a bad experience. Me and my teacher didn't get along. And I was just too young and too weird. And my teacher, I don't know, it was just not an ideal situation.
Yeah,
and,
it's not for everybody too.
Oh yeah. I remember I was, one of our senior projects was to build Tetris. And everybody was having a hard time with it. And then my lab partner said, fuck it, I'm going to fail the class anyway, so I'm not doing this project. And so I got left with the project by myself. And I just was trying to do the best I can just so I could pass the class. And I remember staring at thousands of lines of code for hours and hours and looking for a fucking semicolon. And I just had this whole Office Space moment, I want to break this computer. I'm I can't see my whole life being this. Which is funny because I originally wanted, my vision when I went in and said, because freshman year, you tried different technologies in my school. So I took like graphics, we had material science, we had like a design class, and then computer science. And so you do like construction. There's all sorts of different things you can do at this school that you major in. You take your core classes, but then you had a major. And so I was like computer science because I graduated in 2002. So at this time, the computer science course was new, and everybody was just like, this is going to be the thing and all this kind of stuff. So I got into it, and I was like, I'm going to do websites, and I'm going to do this and do that. And for the first 3 years, we didn't even touch the websites. We were just doing C++ and like hardcore fucking coding. I was like, oh, when are we going to play? Like, I wanted to do fun stuff. Like, this is just like killing my soul. And then I just, which, looking back in my life, it was kind of a good thing. Kind of like, I never really handled the situation, but you're young, you learn. I eventually learned, but I totally went opposite. Like in college, after I graduated, I was like, fuck computers. I got into liberal arts and was like anti-computers. I even have this idea of some sci-fi novel. It's called The Paper Bums, and this guy, to like keep his humanity, writes on paper and like does none of his like real thoughts on the computer because the AI watches it and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's how I
feel
felt.
that's happening.
Yeah, that's how I felt even early on in that stage. I was like, oh, I don't want to use the computer. Like I just went totally opposite. I was like, fuck computers. I would like spend my time in the library with like a real book and writing on real paper and just being like, and I used to like hate social media. I only used it to talk to my friends, but I always trip out because I used to work at a school for my part-time job, running the after-school care and doing homework with kids. And I just started to see these kids change and like they would like go like hashtag this or like and like say stuff. I was like, dude, those are not even real words. Like, what are you guys doing? You bunch of weirdos.
Yeah.
And I was just totally anti that. And it wasn't until a little later, like seriously, I mean, until I got onto Minds, like before that, I didn't see the possibility. I don't know. I tagged you in this recent one that I did is called Operation Mindfuck. The Internet is Acid. And it's like these clips of Douglas Rushkoff and Are You Serious? But there's one point when Douglas Rushkoff says the original strand of cyberpunk ethos where envision technology and media as a way to express, not repress, human creativity. And like, we're still here. And when he said that, I was like, dude, that's exactly how I feel. Mm-hmm. Like, that's me. Because I mean, I got into, I used to actually help Are You Serious do these interviews. Mm-hmm. And I did a couple of music videos for him, just editing, just real weird stuff that I did. And I've facilitated a couple of interviews with him and Douglas Rushkoff. It's funny because that was just my secret plan. Like, okay, this is how I feel about this. And I really like looking at the landscape right now. I'm really resonating with Rushkoff's voice. And I'm like paying homage to what Are You Serious was doing in Mondo 2000. And when, Terrence McKenna was saying that the internet is going to be the global mind and everything they were doing there, somewhere we lost it. And it's like, can we you have a renaissance of like that vision again? And I'm like, dude, we can. And every time things got weirder on Minds, and not a good weird, and a bad weird as far as content, I just felt more like digging in, like no. and not in a combative way, just I am even more committed to doing my weird art. And I mean, I only say this, and I don't usually try to not broadcast this just because how I see things. But there was this initial wave after 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, maybe now it's 2 years. But anyways, when people were getting banned from Twitter and YouTube initially, like the initial after Trump got elected, and then there was this full wave of alt-right people. And I mean, prior to that, we had crazy people. We had crazy people of all different ideology, you know? Like, we had racist people, we had crazy hackers, we had druggies, we had all sorts of crazy people.
God bless him.
Yeah, and it was fine because there was a good, nice ecosystem of crazy people. But then it's just like, we had this onslaught of this particular type of ideology. And they just...
How would you define that?
For lack of a better word, it's like alt-right, I guess. And then, whatever. But they wanted to start to brand minds as alt-right. And I'm like, no. I was like, it should be nothing. It should be some of my earlier stuff that I would like to broadcast would be like, I don't want hive mind. I want a mosaic of minds. Like, I want you guys to be you, and it's fine that we're all different, but in a weird, odd way, we could all fit these pieces together and create something better, you know?
Yeah, Max said something really interesting. One time I was kind of like complaining to him. I said, I'm getting bored of minds because I'm just seeing like political memes, and it's just like, who's even on here who's like saying anything with humanity or individuality? And what he said is like, well, they're actually helpful because the people who are really creating stuff, their content just like shines like through, like it just contrasts so well amongst the myriad of bullshit, so that in a way that it's like they're doing us a favor. The bots and the trolls and the hive minded, they're like somehow like we're benefiting from them. A cool perspective.
Yeah, and there's something too that Rushkoff says in his little rant, and he's in the failure of the digital the digital economy, and it's been a failure. That in its failure, we are looking at it as fertilizer for these new ideas. And when you go back to, I think, some of the better metaphors to look at life and to look at even when you analyze yourself is everything. You have to have that kind of like things degrade and die off to give birth to like new life, fertilizer.
Right. Like the mycelium.
Yeah. And there's a period of where things digress and break down only to give energy and renewal to the new dawn. And that's just how things work,
Yeah. One thing I saw was an article that, I just read the headline, of course, but it was that there's artificial intelligence text bots that are writing whole articles, typically on pop culture or politics, that are designed to be somewhat outrageous or contentious or divisive. And I wonder if we're moving to a place where we just stop trusting text. And I see a renaissance of scribbles, of like, what can a computer not do and what can a human do very well, which I think is just like to think on paper. And I see that as like a really interesting way to distinguish like what we can truly call real. Because some people there's bots, and then there's people who are just behaving like bots.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, because for one thing, it's for each individual, but I remember just recently someone invited me into some group, and she's like, be aware of bots. They could be tricky. And like, don't worry. No bot's going to catch me slipping. I was like, I could recognize bots. Like, but what really concerns me is what you were kind of saying is people behaving like bots. Like, oh my God, that's even scarier. But like even people in real life acting like bots. Like, oh my God, that's even scarier. Yeah.
One thing Bill said is that they're not really trying to eliminate the bots or to combat the bots. They're trying to train the bots. And I don't really understand what that means, but I think it's a like really fascinating thing. It's like if you try to delete the account of every bot, that's just like probably you won't be able to keep up. But if you can identify bot behavior and channel it in ways that just like make it less interfering of true collaboration, like we can do that. We can we can outsmart that system.
Definitely. That line that I put on Mac's post is the logos can't understand Blake, and that's like the central premise of my weird sci-fi story that I hopefully eventually I've written some of it, but that I'll work more towards.
Yeah.
And so the logos is the super AI that takes over everything.
Right.
And the whole point of it is that the guy writes his true thoughts on paper, but he also adds an extra encryption that he writes it in poetry, because the AI can't understand Blake.
Right.
And that's like the thing. It's like there's no way and what we're talking about, like what makes us human, right? What makes us different, and it's our imagination, is our creativity. Yeah, there is, of course, there's always technique and things that can be quantified in a logical sense. You know, like when you're drawing right now, you do circles, but they're not perfect circles, and all these different tools that we learn, but it doesn't have that weirdness, that unique perspective of how you do it in that given time, in that relative time to the whole relative to you in that given moment of all your life. You know, like if you really think about it, like how we get and express the way we are and the way we do things is because of this whole compiling of our whole life, of our whole experience. The reason why I do certain things is because I got exposed to these different influences. And I remember when I got onto Minds, I was like, oh, now all my useless knowledge, like I have a use for it. like all the books that I read on Terrence McKenna and all the weird music I used to listen to. Like, oh, okay. Yeah. I remember, and I was like, finally, like my rare knowledge came into some use. Like, oh, I remember reading, I forgot what was it, the Serpent and the Rainbow. That was about voodoo in Haiti. Like, finally, that weird obscure book that I read once came in handy. But I think about that like all the time now, where that gives me my certain bent on like how I see things and what words I use and what things I like to play with, and you know.
Yeah, I do.